Hello there. So I decided to do a video product where I interview various individuals, many of whom I'm familiar with, and their use of technology in social games such as VRChat, and how it's affected their lives, especially in the area of socialization and self-expression compared to the physical world. I also cover topics of how people may have used VR to cope during the time of the pandemic. So I'll be releasing these videos individually, and if you're interested or curious in the topic of VR or a longtime VR user and have experience with social games such as VRChat, I hope you'll find the different answers people provide to be valuable. I'll be interviewing Altaria. Thank you for stopping by, I really appreciate it. I'll be asking some questions, so feel free to answer them in a way that makes you comfortable. Just keep in mind I'll be publishing this in a video publicly, and it will be edited if necessary, so don't worry about answering perfectly or making mistakes. And if you're ready, we will begin. So,
let's do it.
I usually start out these interviews with sort of an introductory thing. I think I may have not known you quite as long as other people that I've interviewed. I think definitely a little bit longer than, like, I interviewed Babbitt, but I think I've known you a bit longer than Babbitt. I know I first met you during a dance event, I believe, that I was hosting.
Yes, and I was terrible at my introduction with you, and I felt bad about it for like a month. Still kind of feel bad about it today, but it's okay.
No worries.
It's fine.
I think after that, I don't know if I ran into you before. I definitely heard about you, and I think you were involved in, like, Vinesauce charity stuff, right? Were you involved in that? I believe you were.
I could give a very brief explanation. I started hand sewing my first year in college, and that's also when I started watching Vinesauce a lot. So I got the idea to make the little Vine Shroom mascot and send it to Vinny. He liked it a lot. Apparently, he still has it. I'm like, dude, you can throw that away, you know. But I ended up asking, hey, you're doing a charity stream. If I made a bunch of these and sold them and then gave the proceeds to the charity. He said that's a great idea, so I worked with him over the summer of 2014 and 2015 doing that. Then there was the manufactured Vine Shroom, which looks so much better than mine, and I just kept making little things for Vinny, for little skits or things. The Red Frog is my abomination. I created him. So it's my biggest extent in Vinesauce world. I just watch the VODs. I don't have much time to check out the streams anyway, but
yeah, I think so I probably definitely come across your stuff through that as well, and then eventually I think it was it Cypher? I think Cypher pulled you into my Discord.
Yes. dragged me kicking and screaming into the friend group. I'm a very shy person. I tend to just be, you know, I'm very anxious, and I try not to be, but I didn't want to impose. But I got VR for Christmas, like my own Christmas gift. I bought myself a gift, and I hung out in VRChat a lot, but I didn't have a PC connection at the time. He helped me get it hooked up to my ancient PC, and somehow it let me join PC Only Worlds. And that's when he said, hey, I have music at this cool festival thing. You should come. And I'm like, oh, okay, and showed up and met way more people than I ever expected to meet. It was a bit of a shock, but after that, I reached out and was like, hey, I kind of want to do map hops. Could I, like, join the map hops? And he said, sure. And I remember the first one I did because it was really scary. The Banjo-Kazooie map, and I once again made fun of myself because of how nervous I was. But like once I got past that, it became really great. So.
Yeah, you've been joining, like, I know you're not always able to join all the map hops, but you definitely been joining a lot, or you'll come by and hang out when I'm just doing watch stuff as well, and it's been really great to get acquainted with you, get to know you, along with a bunch of the other people
I appreciate
in the community. Yeah. So I'm going to start out with my first VR-related question then. What would you say...
Absolutely.
Now, did you start... I want to ask first, did you use VRC in desktop first or a headset?
Headset first. I didn't know about the desktop connection for a while.
Okay. So it is interesting because, like, it seems to be half and half. There are people who start off and desktop person than people who start off using VR, like VRC, for example, purely in VR. Right. So it's interesting to see what their impressions are. So what would you say your first experience in VRChat was like then?
Where did I go when I first... Oh my god, it feels like so freaking long ago. I went to, obviously, Quest compatible maps, which were very limited. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can actually check, because the worlds that I went to first are going to be the furthest back in my lists. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of these maps that I went to called they're called Map a Day. Who made them? I need to check. But they were Quest compatible, and it was just somebody making maps for the sake of it. These amazing environments. Asylum _ makes all of these, you know, map a week. Forgive me. And they were really basic. They didn't have much ambience or music, but it was like these amazingly crafted spaces with these different assets. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that people are able to make such cool things. I want to be, you know, a part of this. I want to see more things that people make. Maybe I could make things. And that's when I started getting into Unity and making my own stuff.
That's pretty awesome. Like, that's, you know, not a lot of people, like, jump, like, you know, so quickly into, like, map creation or avatar creation to it. Sometimes it takes a while. And, of course, with VRChat, it has, like, a trust system. So you gotta play it for a while before you can even upload stuff. But that's awesome that you got inspired. You're like, I want to make stuff.
It was really funny. It took me much longer to get my proof that I was a decent human being than it did for me to, like, make a map. I got inspired by other people's maps, talked to other people's, to the creators. And they told me how they did it, and they said, oh, it's much easier than you think, and Unity is free. So one winter break, I decided, well, I'm going to give it a shot, see if I can do it. And I gave myself carpal tunnel because I worked on Unity for 2 weeks straight. And then one day I woke up and I couldn't grip things, so I had to back off. But I've always liked creative outlets, so I do latch onto them like a Metroid.
It's nice when, I mean, once you get past that, like, initial learning curve of Unity, like, when you kind of finally get it, then you're like, oh, now I can just kind of, like, start throwing stuff together. It can be nice once you finally get it.
I mean, it helps that I grew up with Spore, which is like a Sims knockoff with the aliens, but you could build things using very similar tools to what Unity does. It felt like a little dollhouse maker. Oh, and then when I got into Unity, I'm like, oh, this is just Spore Builder, but with, like, a space shuttle's level of complexity. I could do this. I just need time to figure out what all these buttons do. So that's what I did.
Yeah, it took me, God, I think I had to, like, I forced myself to learn it because the first, like, it was, like, Vine Realm, so, like, when they actually worked on the game, and I got pulled in, and I was like, okay, time to learn Unity in, like, 3 months. But it's a good experience.
I think I speedrun the basics of Unity in like 2 weeks, which is kind of insane, but I still don't know everything I need to know. You have actually uploaded amazing maps completed with all these different effects. I've gotten through, like, the dollhouse phase of making them, but then the complexity of all the coding and the toggles makes me get overwhelmed. So I make things, but they're not accessible yet because it takes a while. So I usually go big or go home, so my maps are way too big.
Yeah, it can take a while because, of course, VRChat is adding new things all the time and changing stuff. So you're gonna always be learning. You're always gonna be learning.
True. Wish I just had more time for it.
Yeah, it's the same. I wish I could just pump out worlds. So many people can. I just don't know how they're able to do it, and I'm just like, 1 map a year, or so, 1 or 2 maps maybe.
1 map a year. Yeah. Yeah, I have, like, a magnum opus, and once I'm done with that, I may never make a map again, but I just want to get it done, you know?
That is true. I could relate to that. So was there anything that encouraged you to finally get a VR headset? Like, any reasons?
Actually, it was Vinny's streams of VRChat. You watched him mess around in VRChat with Ross and a bunch of other friends, and I saw how, you know, during the pandemic, you could have experiences with friends even when you're hundreds of miles away in an immersive way, like you're right there in the same room with them. And I was just like fascinated with this. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I decided to budget for a headset, and when they went on sale, I grabbed one and started messing around with it. I didn't get into VRChat for a while just because it's kind of intimidating.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that.
It was just Psy at the time that I knew, and I didn't want to... I try not to bother people, but I think I'm a little too, you know, conservative about, oh, I don't want to bother people. Well, they want to spend time with you, go talk to them.
Exactly. So you're using Quest 2, right? Quest 2?
Yes, I'm using a Quest 2.
Okay, and another question I want to ask along with this, and it's so whenever you get into VR and you first experience it and you're using it for a while, sometimes it's hard to really explain what it's like to people who have never experienced before. So I want to ask you, how would you describe your first experience with virtual reality, and is there anything you could compare it to?
It was really... my very first... When I booted up the headset, I was at my parents' house for Christmas. And the first thing I saw was the grid lines, you know, on top and bottom. And I'm like, okay, what's the big deal here? This doesn't seem very interesting. And then once it finally logged me in, it put me in this beach scene. And I was just like, whoa, what the hell? Everything just feels like it's right here. Obviously, you can't feel the warm breeze or smell the sand or things like that. But it was by far the most immersive, like, video experience I had in my life. And so I wanted more of it. And I had to pace myself because you got to give your brain a little time to get used to VR its entirety. It's you get motion sick if you go too quickly.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Through, like, getting your VR legs.
Did you get adjusted quickly, or did you have to take some time? Because everyone's different.
Oh, it took some time for me. That's the other reason that I didn't jump immediately into VRChat, because I knew that aside from teleporting, you would need to get used to moving in the fake world while your body stayed still in meat space. So I started with, like, Vacation Simulator or Job Simulator, where it creates something around you based on the size of your play space, and if you're moving, you're doing so both in the game and in real life. And then I did, like, Walkabout Mini Golf, which lets you teleport, but eventually also lets you very slowly no-clip through the air to different places, and encourages it with, like, hidden golf balls and mini games. So once I felt like I could zoom around in that environment safely, I felt like maybe it was time to try VRChat, but I still can't run around as very short avatars. I get sick so fast.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of someone having that reaction to smaller avatars. So yeah, everyone's different.
It's the rate at which I think it's the rate at which my brain perceives me moving. When you're closer to the ground, everything moves by you faster than if you're, like, really, really tall.
Huh. Never thought about it that way. So I'm going to ask a question about socialization in the physical space, so, like, meat space as we call it, so just answer however you're comfortable. But when it comes to, like, socializing and interacting with people in the physical space, how would you describe yourself and your interactions with others, and how does this translate to, like, the internet, where we usually interact with people with text and voice?
So is it, like, my demeanor, or how I would, like... I'm just getting clarification, like, how would I describe my demeanor in real life versus in virtual space?
Yeah, like, how would you describe yourself with your interactions on, like, in the physical space and the internet compared to VR? I mean, I
code switch a lot. Most everybody does, where, like, the way you talk to your boss is not the way you talk to your homies. So it really depends on the group that I'm talking to, but in meat space, I have to worry about, you know, issues with my body, the ways I present to people, having to correct people a lot more. There's a lot of discomfort involved in that at least in VR, it's mitigated. I am a giant green dragon in VR space, and I don't have to worry about some of the parts of me in the meat space that I can't just magic away.
Yeah, that's definitely relatable and understandable. So would you say using VR changed, like when you started using VR, or after using VR for a while, would you say it's changed the way you interacted with others compared to like interacting in the real world? Like if you would, if you think about how you were before you used virtual reality, and then after using VR for a while and interacting with people in VR, would you say it's like kind of influenced the way you interact with people now, or changed you in any way?
This is actually a difficult question for me to answer, because I ended up, there were other things in my life that were changing around the time I started doing VR a lot, so I'm not sure if I can attribute it entirely to one or the other, or maybe part of both of them are involved. I just know that when we met up for TMG, I was terrified, but all I thought was, okay, just talk and act like you do when you are a Dragonite online. That's literally it. Like, don't be all mousy, I'm sorry, I don't want to be a problem. Just be yourself the same way you've always been free to be online. And it worked out pretty well. I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that actually kind of helped, having that to put you in that mindset to help you when interacting in real life.
I think that it's good practice to have an environment like this for people that may have social struggles, to sort of practice, like, with the training wheels off of just like, well, not the training wheels, no, that's not the right word, without the struggles of, oh, do I look good? Am I making the right facial expressions? Oh, I don't think my shirt is a good shirt today, or some, anxiety latches onto the weirdest things. In space, all you really can be worried about is like your voice and how much you're talking. So it sort of removes some of the confounding variables of social experiences, and ideally lets you, get comfortable without all that crap to worry about. And then once you get into the real world, you can try and take the lessons you learned in this space and just apply it to, it's like, who cares what shirt you're wearing? Who cares if your hair doesn't look good today? You're here, everybody wants you here, just let it go.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And in VRC or any other VR social space, it's kind of like it provides more of a safe way to interact. If you're struggling with those issues when it comes to interacting with people, and you're not attached to a meat body, you don't have to worry about people paying attention to your body language in your physical self. There is body language here, but it's a bit different. And of course, you have the choice of choosing, like, what body you want to use, and so it's just and also you don't have to worry about someone like physically being there. You can be in the comfort of your own home and like feel safe while you're doing so. And of course, like, if someone's bothering you, you can just take out the headset or log off or something like that. You don't have to worry about being in a physical situation quite as much.
And I feel like for people who are still self-conscious about some of the body language that their controllers might make, or, oh no, am I making the right facial expression, or is pointing going to make me look all scared like right now, you can choose avatars that are essentially like amorphous blobs of the void that don't have normal human limbs, and you can just walk around. I mean, I've got a couple that are like that, where it's essentially you're just like an orb, and then you talk as an orb, and you have no hands, you have no eyes, you are just there as a voice. And if that's what you need to try and feel more comfortable, like, there is nothing for you to worry about. You are an orb. So,
yeah, like, no one cares. No one will care either if you choose to be.
True, no one cares either way, but sometimes it can be irrational.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. So here's the, and you can answer this in any way you feel. I think you did bring up the pandemic too, but did you use VR during the pandemic, and did it help you cope with it in any way? Like, since you said you used VRC and VR, I don't know if you used it back then.
For me, by the time I got my headset, the pandemic was, winding down. I could leave the house, I could see my friends again. But what spurred me to want VR was seeing that connection that it could make with people. And even though the pandemic has passed, I feel like a lot of the things that the pandemic pushed are still very relevant. Like, there are days when I feel like crap. Something, you know, we're all human. We all live on this rock. We got finances, family members, physical health, mental health, what have you. And it can get really, really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And we've, you know, as a species, we are all about escapism, the books, the movies, the series, binging Netflix, you know, playing video games. It's all escapism. And everybody has their own brand that they like most and that helps them the most. For VR, you know, sometimes I get really angry about stuff I can't control, or, you know, really down about things that I don't know how things are going to turn out. I mean, I feel like that's also very human, but coming into VRChat and seeing the amount of creativity and, like, kindness that people can have. Like, when I went to Astral Bound, I was feeling really down, and you recommended that to me. I friggin' cried while watching all that cool stuff, because it was, in that moment, what I desperately needed was to be proved, like, somebody needed to prove to me that, like, there's good people, and there's amazing, creative, talented people, and, like, you know, the world isn't quite so bleak as that moment makes you feel. And I just felt very encouraged. I'm like, if somebody could take all their time and energy and creativity and create this beautiful masterpiece of a world, and then I get to look at it for free, essentially, now that I have my headset, maybe not all is lost. There's still so much in this world that we can be happy about.
Yeah, it's great for and this will be relevant to a later question I asked, but like you can just, if you're having a hard time, you can just, you know, the convenience of it, if you have access to VR, you can temporarily step into a different world and surround yourself with beautiful things and an immersive environment, and sort of just, you know, get out of that headspace you were previously in just for a little bit, and it can definitely help for sure.
And sometimes you can even embrace the headspace. There have been times where I go to a world that is rainy and sad to give myself a space to have my emotions and to work through them. Like when you're sad, you listen to sad music, same principle. Sometimes you just need a little space where you can deal with those emotions. And it's very helpful to have it here in VR.
That's a good way to look at it as well. It's definitely useful for that. So here's the next question. Have you noticed, I don't know if you're a people observer, some of the people I interviewed are definitely people observers in VRChat, but have you noticed or observed any changes in other people that you've been around that have used VR for a while? Have you noticed like them also being influenced by VR after using VR for a while? I don't know if you've been around anyone in VRC long enough to see it.
I'm not sure if I feel like I came here a little late in the race, so if there were major changes in people's ability to, you know, their comfort level, they would probably be able to speak to that better than me, since those changes are probably mostly done by the time I got here. I bet they referenced me a couple times in your question, I hope, because I started out being so terrified to talk I barely spoke. And now you can't shut me up, so...
That is, yeah,
I'm not sure if that's win or a loss.
I don't think, I think when I've interviewed other people, no specific, usually, you know, no specific names are mentioned, but I think a general thing is just seeing how people, over time, when they, you know, people who are very timid or very quiet, and you could still be that way in VRChat, there's a whole culture of, like, mutes and everything where people just watch and interact, but they don't say anything. Totally fine to be like that if you want to, don't have to talk. But, you know, we've all observed people gradually kind of open up as they've used interacted with others in the VR space, and it's always nice to see that. You know, they're kind of going at their own pace and using VR to help them do that.
I don't know. You know, I sometimes see people, they have something to say, but the dynamic of the conversation moves so quickly that they miss a chance, and I usually do notice that because I've been there and it sucks. You want to be involved, but you know, you don't have a good opportunity and you're still getting used to being assertive or jumping in. So when I see that, I do try and, like, once the conversation is paused, be like, hey, I heard you had something to say, you know, and give them a chance to jump in and be a part of the conversation, because I know that's like.
Yeah, I was I like that? I don't know if I was like that. I definitely had some time to put myself out there and talk and interact, I guess, on the internet before VRC, so I guess I was already I didn't quite need it to open up, but it still definitely helped me get more comfortable with people around me for sure. So I'm going to ask a question about identity and self-expression in VRChat. You might be able to relate to this or have something to say about it, but answer how you feel is best. So what about identity or sense of self and self-expression, like your sense of self-expression? Do you feel like time in VR social spaces such as VRChat have influenced or changed things about you or allowed you to explore yourself in a way that is different from the physical space?
I'll tell you right now, when I started doing multiplayer activities in VR, it was a huge comfort to do my walkabout mini golf as a floating head. I was just a floating head with like visor. That's it. And it let me feel comfortable. In terms of identity, I was already on a bit of a journey once I had started VR, but I do know that VRChat let me try different avatars that didn't have any preconceived boxes.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Like in the real world, you sort of are born in a box, and it's really hard to switch boxes or just leave the boxes behind entirely. In VRChat, you get to pick your box or lack of box or combination of boxes, Schrodinger's box, it's whatever you want. And it does definitely help me be more, I think being confident in myself in VR has helped me be more confident in real life. If I just take that energy and that feeling of, I am who I am, and it doesn't really, matter whether I'm in meat space or virtual reality, if I can have this kind of confidence in real life, like I do in virtual space, then I know I'm going to be happier and people are going to have more fun talking to me.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. I can relate to that as well. And I of course, like, I don't know if I'll talk about it as well or have someone interview me, because that'll have to happen, but I can definitely relate to, having the freedom of being able to, switch boxes, as you said, utilizing VR or things like VRChat. It can definitely be helpful when it comes to, like, self-expression.
I've spoken to people in VR, and I won't name names, but who have gone from being very sure of how they felt about something, and then going and interacting with different people and going, oh, actually, I didn't have a full understanding of this, and maybe I do like this thing, and maybe I do want to try this, and now I have space where I can do that and either, get encouragement or critique from people around me. And so within the span of a year, it was, I really don't like this group of people, to I am going to a thing with this group of people. And it's nice to be able to see people evaluate their boxes just by interacting with people and seeing things in action here in VR.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to, like, the thing I mentioned of having, like, a safe way to be able to, like, observe others or interact with others, compared to, like, the physical space, where it might be certain situations might be more difficult. Like, it might be more difficult for people to, like, get different perspectives on others to gain an understanding, depending on where they're at, because depending on where they're at or who they're near, it could be more limiting. But in VR or VRChat, they have, like, there's more opportunities to be exposed. And on that note, when it comes to the VR helping people in that way, what is your opinion on VR being used for, like, things like mental health therapy or for therapeutic purposes?
I think that it is a great tool. I love, as somebody who has to, cultivate my mental health like it's a spice garden, I have amassed a lot of tools that help me cope and function, and I think that VR can be an amazing tool. And the only thing I would think of that it might, not be an amazing tool is if someone uses it as their sole means of support.
Yeah.
Because usually when it comes to mental health, you want a lot of options. So that if something fails, something changes, something becomes unhealthy, you can lean on other tools. So I think that it has, like, a great opportunity to be a good mental health tool.
definitely. I agree with that for sure. And on a final note, if you could recommend use of VR to others in ways that are not associated with just gaming, what reasons would you provide? Because you definitely seem like you've enjoyed your use of VR. So would you recommend it to
absolutely.
others? And what reasons?
It depends on what the person wants out of it, but I do encourage people to keep their options open, because I started VR maybe for the games and then really leaned into it for the social aspect. I could still play the games, but I do use it mostly for social stuff. My brother is considering getting actually he has a VR headset now, because he said, all right, you win, I'm getting a VR headset and I want you to show me around VRChat at some point. And I'm like, yes! Yes! I was so happy.
The VR contagion has spread.
Yes, it has spread. I'm very happy. But I would say the price point can be a bit of a sticking point for some people, especially for people who don't game. Like, okay, social life, I don't need to spend $300 on this to have a social life online, but I usually just present my experiences and then let people see how those experiences might apply to what they want. I try not to tell people, oh no, you need this or you have to have this, because we're all different and we all do things differently. So, but I will be like, if you're thinking about it, you're welcome to come try mine out. My best friend tried my headset out, and while she loved the freedom, it made her really sick. And she's like, this is cool, but like, I don't think I would be able to do this long term. And I was like, okay, I'm happy that you gave it a shot. And so, I encourage people to try it, but if it's not their thing, then that's fine with me.
I think it is a good idea, especially because it is an investment, depending on which one you're going for, to have someone that, like, either a friend or family member or someone who's knowledgeable to be kind of like a guide, or if you have the opportunity to try it first before considering buy it, that's always helpful, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the price point does increase, like, oh, you get a Quest, that's not too expensive, but you want everything VR has to offer, now you have to have a gaming PC. My brother was like, this sounds cool, but I don't have $500 to put towards a PC just so I can go to the fancy VRChat worlds at the moment. And I'm like, well, yeah, that is completely understandable.
There's a lot of layers to this, and it's a learning experience. I'm sure you've had to learn too, and like other people in our group are like, well, it's not just this, you got to have so many other components, so it's
oh yes, we started with just a motherboard and CPU upgrade, and then I found out, oh no, your PSU can't handle this, and now you need an SSD, and the shelf, it was like a whole overhaul. It started with, let's just do this, and it turned into, good thing I budgeted for a little extra, because I'm really happy with my upgrade, but it's not something that people can just throw their money at, and I get that.
Yeah, I end up, I would say VR, in relation to that, VR has definitely pushed me to have it do a lot of upgrades. It's not a negative thing. I chose to want to have this experience and experience the best that I could offer, but if you're going to do that, you're going to have to invest some money into it and do some upgrades. But it felt like it was
building for it too.
Yes, exactly.
If you're my VR, one of the world I'm working on right now got so gargantuan that there was so much lag just running, like moving the camera around the world. There was no way I could work on it anymore. It's not that it was that big. It's just that my computer wasn't juiced to be able to handle it. So I filled it up with some good juice. Now I can work on my project again.
That's good to hear. Yeah, it's something you as a map creator or even an avatar creator in VRChat specifically, worry about optimization and if your own rig can handle it, if other people's rigs can handle it. So there's a lot of things to consider when using this space and making stuff for this space as well. So that's it for the interview. I thank you so much for coming by and taking time out of your day to answer these questions. I'm sure a lot of, like, since I'm going to be putting out all these individual videos, I'm sure there will be people who appreciate hearing your feedback on all these different topics in relation to VR. I always love hearing everyone's different answers and what they have to say, because it makes me think about stuff that I didn't even think about as well. So it really has been great.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. If you like this video project and would like to reach out for an interview yourself, Feel free to contact me here on the various social platforms that I'm on, and I'll be happy to set one up. Thank you again for watching. I appreciate it.